If you're an author or plan to be one, get excited because this podcast is for you. Book Marketing Mentors is the only podcast dedicated to helping you successfully market and sell your book. If you're ready for empowering conversations with successful marketing mavens, then grab a coffee or tea and listen in to your host, international best-selling author Susan Friedman.
Welcome to Book Marketing Mentors, the weekly podcast where you learn proven strategies, tools, ideas, and tips from the masters. Every week, I introduce you to a marketing master who will share their expertise to help you market and sell more books. Today, my special guest is Robbie Samuels. Robbie is an award-winning author with 3 books, 650 plus Amazon reviews, and 30 #1 bestseller ribbons across 4 countries. Entrepreneurs use his don't just hit publish, launch your book strategies to get 50 plus Amazon reviews and build a revenue pipeline. He founded the Biz Book Pub Hub to connect entrepreneurs with experts who will help them become successful authors. He also hosts the Hub podcast, free virtual networking events, and Kindle cross-promotion campaigns. Robbie, it's a pleasure to welcome you back, and I believe it's for the 3rd time, which is a record. Thank you for being this week's guest expert and mentor.
I'm honored that you brought me back again. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, I know that you have so much great information to share. And I want to make sure that our listeners can learn from your wisdom because the book launch strategy is such an important part of the book marketing journey. And I thought that I don't think we've ever had an episode where I've just talked about the book launch. That's what we are going to do. As you know, I always, in the interview, like to talk about mistakes, but I think for this episode, to get us started, let's talk about the biggest mistake authors make when it comes to launching their book, because I think that'll be a great springboard for us to take our conversation. So let's go. What's the biggest mistake?
It depends on why they're writing a book. So let's just set the context. My strategies could work for any genre, but I am specifically speaking to entrepreneurs who are writing a book to help them grow their business as a speaker, coach, or consultant. If that is the case, the biggest mistake is not having a plan or a purpose for the book once the book exists. All of their time, money, and energy goes towards the publication of the book, and that publication day becomes this major deadline, but there's no real plan or strategy for what comes next, and they don't even have a very strong wish list for what comes next. It's vague notions. And the things they're kind of thinking about are like #1 bestseller on Amazon or selling 1 million books. It's either the extreme of selling 1 million books or it's the likely to happen, but not to actually change the trajectory of a business, hitting #1 on Amazon. I think the mistake is not being as well informed as they can be about the possibilities. And that's not really their fault if it's their first time, because they don't know what they don't know. I think finding the right kinds of supports and being in a community of other writers and authors is a way around this. But I would say it's just a shame when someone publishes a book, whether they did it self-published or hybrid published, and it doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't serve that author and their business. And that would be, I think, the biggest mistake.
Yeah, that's always so sad. And I think you know that one of the first questions I ask authors when they come and work with me is, what do you want the book to do for you? And that is the next step after the launching, is like going into, well, do I want speaking? Do I want training? Because as you and I know, you're not going to make money just selling books, or very seldom, unless you're a true celebrity. And I know you are on that trajectory, but the fact is that we don't make money just selling books. It's the what else it does for us, and obviously what it does for our readers. So let's get stuck into what it takes to launch a book properly. Take it away.
It really goes back to the why behind all of this. I lean heavily into engaging the author's network around that why, because I see the author's network as an untapped resource. Before I was focusing on book launches, I was coaching entrepreneurs on how to engage their own network around the launch of an offer. In fact, my second book is called Small List, Big Results. Launch a successful offer no matter the size of your email list. And my premise then, as it is today, is that your network is always bigger than your email list. The benefit of doing this through a book launch is that as the author, the business owner, puts so much energy into creating this book, it gives them the, I don't know what it is, the gumption to actually do the steps of reaching out to their network. So the goal of a launch with my clients is that they get 50 or more written Amazon reviews. The process of doing that is actually the purpose of the launch, meaning that by getting their launch team of likely prospects and referral partners from their existing network engaged in the process of writing and publishing their reviews, it's the conversations that they're having back and forth over that time period that opens the door to new revenue and new media opportunities. And they ultimately, if they know why as they're going in, like what they're aiming to do, they will have the right people on the launch team. And whether that person, each individual writes a review or not, they're now engaged and activated and possibly opening doors for the author. Ultimately, that is the bigger picture. And then the launch party positions the author as the expert, and it helps us both celebrate the launch of the book, but it's also very forward thinking about what comes next. So that question you ask everybody about what do you want this book to do for you, that's why I created the BizBook Pub Hub, because I want experts like you asking that question at the very beginning of this writing process, and again, recalibrating that question throughout the process of writing a book so that the book is the right book for the goals that that author has.
Yeah, because that's so important because, yeah, it's going to really help in terms of the messaging and the value that this book is going to have for, as you say, the readers. I love the distinction between your network and your email list.
Mm-hmm.
So we know a whole lot more people, as you rightly say, in our network, because the average, I think, is everybody knows at least 250 people. Some people have that in their families, but beyond that, the fact is that our communities, our church, our temples, our other activities that we get involved with, that there are people out there who aren't necessarily on our email list, but yet would be willing to help us when it comes to launching the book. How far in advance should we be thinking about this launch and planning it?
Well, I think what's important here is getting clarity about who the book is for, right? If I know that I want to sell my services into a company, then it's not going to be helpful for me to get people from my temple on my launch team, unless some of those people have executive roles in a company. So I would start to get selective about the who, clearly based on the book. I like to start thinking about this process as soon as I know the book is going to happen. That doesn't mean when I sit down and write the book initially. I am on my fourth book. I'm about to release, actually, when this airs, it'll be my launch party. Launch Your Book, An Entrepreneur's Guide to Reviews That Drive Revenue is my fourth book, and I don't identify as a writer, right? Writing is not my first communication medium, but I can approach this process now knowing it's worthwhile effort. I reach a point when I realize that I'm committed to this project, it's going to happen, and then I throw up a Google form. So if I mention the book to people and they show some interest, I share the link to the Google form in order to collect their information. So for my most recent book, about 5 months before it was published, I started to collect some names, but very quietly. I would say 2 months before publication, I started to take action in more earnest. That's around the same time I started to really work on the cover design and the book was being polished and it was being sent to an editor. I really made an effort at that point to start to gear up getting the launch team ready. But numbers wise, what I'll say is that if you want 50 people to write a written review and publish the review, and I'm clarifying written review because on Amazon, you can leave 1 to 5 stars. That's called a rating. You don't have to buy anything and you don't have to write anything to leave a rating. And there are a lot of authors who have hundreds of ratings and less than 10 reviews. So the reviews are the written text that goes with the ratings. So if you're aiming for 50 reviews, you need 4 times as many people on your invite list for your launch team because you need 3 times as many to say yes. You need 150 people to say yes to joining your launch team to pretty much guarantee that you'll have 50 or more reviews published in a specific tight time frame in relation to when your book is published. Those are sort of the numbers, and they scale up and down. I just worked with Lois Kramer from the National Speakers Association on her second edition of her book, Book More Business, Make More Money Speaking. And she asked about 550 people. A little under 400 said yes, and 131 left a review by her launch day. And she's closing in on 150 reviews right now. So reviews will continue to trickle in. She did great. And her whole job was to give us a list. My team and I actually handled the implementation for her because there's a lot of technical pieces with sending merges of email messages, et cetera, tracking spreadsheets. But she had the strength of a community behind her that she was known to do really good work and people wanted to support her.
Yes. And we've had her on as a guest. Yes. She's got so much wisdom to add to this. What is a strategy that, let's say, people actually overlook when it comes to this launch? You're looking at getting the right number of people to help, which, as you said, you've got to multiply whatever you want by 4. Talk to us about what might be something people sort of forget.
Yeah. One thing is if you have so far been asking for people to join your launch team by saying, hit reply to this message or comment on this post, you don't have one place to collect all the responses and you will lose track of who said, yes, I want to support you. So having a form, it could be a landing page to sign up for your email list. I've actually moved away from that in favor of using a Google form because there's a little bit more information I like to collect besides name and email. Also, I don't want them to get regular emails from me until after the launch if they're not already a member of my email list, as a subscriber list. I want to focus my outreach to them on the launch sequence. And then at the end of the launch sequence, there's an opportunity on the Google form to say, yes, add me to your email list, or no, thanks. So if they say yes, then I will send them the welcome message and include them going forward. Not having a singular place to gather everybody is one issue. And the other, Susan, is that I like to collect reviews in advance of the publication date. So the launch team members get the ARC, the advanced reader copy, and they get some writing prompts, some review prompts, and they're given a deadline of a couple of weeks later to send their review text in via a Google form. The book is not yet published. They cannot actually put it on Amazon. And that is an additional step. And I have a lot of reasons for why I'm doing this, but that's something that most people don't do. And we're not in the habit as just general people of writing reviews, yet studies have shown that more than 90% of buyers check reviews before making a purchase. But we don't go around writing reviews all the time. When I was doing research for my book, I discovered that toilet paper brands have between 5,000 and 15,000 written reviews on Amazon.com and on Target.com, which sounds like a lot until you think about how many millions of rolls of toilet paper get purchased every year. There are people who feel compelled to have an opinion and leave an opinion online about toilet paper, but it's rare. And so a very small percentage of people have an outsized influence on the buying habits of everyone else, which is why getting those reviews collected in advance means there's a likelihood that they will then be published soon after the book is published. And that early reviews, those early purchases are all part of the Amazon algorithm getting things started. Missing that window is another big mistake.
Yeah. I'd never thought of putting a review about toilet paper, to be honest with you. However, you did answer a question that I was going to ask, is that The fact is that people, they want to write a review, but they don't know how. And so with the best will in the world, but the fact is you already said that you offer templates, which I think is a brilliant idea because, as I said, people don't know how. And even if they do want to write something, it's far too wordy. So do you
It's not a template. It's 4 review prompts. So I'm not giving them,
prompts.
It's not like a fill in the blank template. I am asking them to answer at least 2 of these 4 prompts and to write a 2 or 3 sentences. If they want to write 2 or 3 paragraphs, that's fine. But minimum couple sentences in order to share some value. What is a takeaway you got from the book? What is a line that resonated with you, a quote or a line? What will you do differently because of this book? How would you describe this book to a friend? Who would benefit from reading this book? Those are the kinds of questions that I pose. And if they answer 2 of them, that's going to be a really helpful review. I don't dictate how many stars they should leave for me. My book 3 is about Zooms, called Break Out of Boredom, Low-Tech Solutions for Highly Engaging Zoom Events. And I have a 1-star written review on there. The title is Wokeness at Its Best. And the 1-sentence review says something about how something inclusive. I don't know. Here's the thing. It's a book about Zoom, and it's a 1-star review, and almost all the rest are 5 stars. So people click on this 1 star, like, what's this problem? And honestly, it reaffirms that my book is different than other books on Zoom. Like, wait, what do you mean it's a book? What is this wokeness at its best? Oh, he's actually trying to teach people how to be engaged and welcoming and create these transformative and inclusive experiences. Like, it actually could lead some people to want to read my book, while maybe others will want to. That's just fine. So it's a 1-star review, but I would say it's still a helpful review for those who are considering the book. I think the review process is about convincing your launch team that they don't have to write a whole book report. I think people hear this and they go, oh my gosh, I have to write a whole book report. No. But they also don't want to send them to a blank square on the Amazon review page where they're just staring at a blinking cursor and they have no idea what to write. And then they write this like, well, it was a good book. I've known Susan since kindergarten, so I always knew she had it in her. That's not a good review. It's not a good review. It's not a helpful review. And it's a review that will likely get flagged by Amazon for being overly familiar with the author. That's why I want to do this work of coaxing them through the writing process, and then separately coaching them through publishing it, like the importance of buying the book because of verified reviews and how important they are. And that's why I'm lowering the price for this period of time for the Kindle version, down to don't stress about the title, just kind of walking them through to help them achieve the result. Because here's the thing. When people join a launch team, they are setting an intention to write a review. If they do it in a timely manner, they're going to feel great, and I'm going to feel great. If it goes on their to-do list and never gets to the to-done list, they're not going to feel very good about it. My wife was just talking about someone that she didn't leave a review for 2 years ago. The woman asked her once. They see each other occasionally at some book clubs, and every time my wife goes, oh my God, I was supposed to do that, in her head. She's feeling really bad. The author has no idea, right? The author has no idea that she's still stressing about this. You don't want that to be the feeling people have when they see you. Like, oh gosh, I don't want to go interact with Susan because I promised her I was going to do this thing and I didn't do it. If you only ask one time, about 1 in 10 people will take action. You have to have a process for nurturing people with some gentle reminders. But you also don't want to remind someone to take action on a step they already did, which is why I do what I call hyper personalization, but at scale. I'm managing hundreds of people on a spreadsheet. Only the people who need the nudge reminder get it. The others don't get it until it's time to take the next action. I'm using a process that allows me to hyper-personalize the experience for the individual, recognizing where they are in that journey.
This is so organized, and this is why you're so successful, because you've got this way of implementing all these different actions and you know exactly what goes where and when to do it. It's brilliant. How do you know if your launches are actually successful? What are the keys to that?
Well, I'm aiming for discoverability on Amazon long term. And I'm also aiming for social proof on the book sales page. Discoverability is related to the Amazon algorithm, and social proof is related to the humans that will be checking out the book later on. So let's break that down to 2 steps. Amazon's search algorithm, if I type a keyword into Amazon, it's going to look for books based on that keyword. But how will they rank on the Amazon search results page? Well, there are a few things that get factored in: quantity of reviews, quality of reviews, which is a factor of both the positiveness of the review, but also that some books get 2 or 3 paragraph reviews and some get 1 sentence, right? So if there's more robust reviews, that also factors into the quality. Recency of reviews. If you got 35 reviews within a month of your launch, but 3 years later you have no new reviews, you're not going to rank as high as someone else that may only have 25 reviews, but there's more recent reviews coming in. And then the last factor is what percentage of total reviews are verified reviews, meaning the person who left the review first purchased the book on Amazon. The algorithm factors all that in, and then your book either shows up on the front page of the search results or doesn't. For discoverability, I want to be on that first page. Now, the human factor is when we go to buy something, we check the reviews. And I think the 90% on the studies would probably be even higher when it comes to a book. 95% of people probably glance the reviews. What are the reviews saying? Is this a book for me or not? My wife, again, she reads a lot of books. And because of her, I actually read a lot more books too. And a lot of that is romance. And if there's a 1-star review on Goodreads and it's like, oh, there was so much smut, she's like, oh, what's the book? Right? Like one person's yuck is someone else's yum. Another example of, just because it was a bad rating doesn't mean that it's going to be bad for everybody. I think we check reviews before making that kind of purchase because we're not just buying something, we're committing our time to consuming the book. If you have more reviews, then you're more likely to also get people to buy your future book. The other factor are all the people who are thinking about hiring you. I might be considering you as a speaker. Now, every speaker for this conference has a book. That's maybe even been a requirement for being considered. Now the event planner has to go take a glance through each of the person's websites and eventually they'll glance their Amazon. I have on my last book about Zoom over 250 written reviews. Someone else has a book about Zoom that has 8 written reviews and 43 total ratings. I have an edge on that person because there's more validity that what I wrote about was helpful. There are more people putting their name down as social proof saying this guy knows something. I think it influences, even if they're not going to buy the book from Amazon, maybe they're going to buy the book from an independent bookstore. They're still going to glance the reviews on Amazon because it is a marketplace where the reviews get gathered. So I see it as a place that we get to control, much like we control our website. We control what our LinkedIn says about us. We should be able to control that our book sales page looks as good as possible and will have as high a conversion as possible. People come to the page, they buy the book, or they come to the page and they hire us. That's how I'd measure success, is the book is actually working for us. And then the last piece I'll say, Susan, is that the process of launching, of having conversations, opened the conversation to new revenue and new media opportunities. Imagine the book as a brick that holds a door open between you and another person. At first, the door is barely held open by the book. But over that couple of months of the launch sequence, you're having more and more conversations with this person. And the door is now being pushed further open, propped open further and further until they invite you in. When they invite you in, they're inviting you in to be a guest on their podcast or to come speak at their organization, or they're making a referral for you. That is where we see the benefits ripple out for 3, 6, 12 months, where bulk orders of sales are being arranged when the book is available and then people are being hired to speak with bulk orders. Like that, to me, is a success of a book, is one that has that longevity for a business.
You've been referring to Amazon all the time as a platform. There are other platforms out there. I know you mentioned Goodreads, but what about these other platforms? Can you transfer some of the reviews to other platforms, or how does that work?
One of the reasons I like collecting reviews in advance via a Google form before just sending people to the Amazon page to submit them is because it helps them in the process of writing a thoughtful review. But also, there's always a percentage of people who have trouble publishing. The most likely reason they can't publish their review on Amazon is they haven't spent $50 on that account in the last 12 months. let's say I always use my wife's account, but I still have an Amazon account, and I decide, oh, I want to leave the review in my name. So then I buy your book through my account and I try to leave you a review. It's not going to work. I haven't actually bought anything in my account for a very long time. If that happens, sometimes there's a workaround. Maybe you decide, oh, I'll put it on my wife's account, but sometimes there is no workaround. That review can still be repurposed and used elsewhere. And any quality review can be repurposed elsewhere. Some of this requires the permission or support of the launch team member. So you can guide them to republish it on Goodreads. There are no purchase requirements on Goodreads. So anyone who wrote a review could also leave it on Goodreads. I ask if they have a Goodreads account or a StoryGraph account on the intake form, because StoryGraph and Goodreads are two other large review sites that people frequent who are avid readers. If they do, then I'll do a follow-up message after I receive the review and the book's been published saying, don't forget, put it also on whichever one they mention. I can also ask them to post it as a LinkedIn recommendation and make it really easy to do so. If they say, sure, I'll do that, I will then send them the review text when I send the LinkedIn recommendation request. I could turn it into a social graphic and invite them to post it on their socials, as well as I could share it on my own. If it's a really excellent endorsement and a high, maybe a person who has some esteem or gravitas in your network, then you may even turn it into a late endorsement and add it to the editorial review section of your book's page, again, with their permission. A lot of this is just saying like, wow, I loved what you said. That's so profound. That's so helpful. I'd love to share it in these other ways. What would make the most sense for you? And then pick something that they are keen to do and then help them make it happen. Again, it could be on your website. It could be on your book's landing page as social proof. Once you have that text, it's really much easier over time to keep reaching out. And I think of it as ladders of engagement. We have the initial ask, which was to join the launch team and write a review. Once they take that step, now we can ask them to do the one more thing. I don't upfront say, here's all the things I want you to do, because it's a little overwhelming. The immediate ask is to join the launch team and write a review that they put on Amazon. But then for some people, they're willing to do a lot more than that.
What went through my mind now was I published a book, let's say, and crickets, nothing happened with it. What's the thought about relaunching a book maybe a year after it was actually published? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's a great idea, and there's a few different ways to approach it. If we were meeting and having a strategy call, I would ask you questions about what you had hoped for from your book initially. I had someone reach out to me for a relaunch discussion. I offer these complimentary book launch brainstorming sessions. And when she got on the call, I was actually a little surprised because she had 32 written reviews on Amazon. And most people asking for support for a relaunch don't have many reviews at all. I was thinking, well, she's actually done pretty well. Anything over 20 means she made real effort. To get 20 reviews requires a bit of effort. To get more than that, get to 50 requires a real process. I asked her what was going on, and she said her book really hadn't been leading to new business. She'd wanted to turn it into a calling card to help her get more speaking engagements, and it hadn't been working. And my brain immediately thought, well, of the 32 people who wrote a review, I'm sure some of them are prospects and referral partners. Let me dive into that. So I asked her about how she got those reviews, because clearly she put a lot of effort in. And she said, oh, Robbie, my friends and family, they really came through for me. It was kind of a facepalm moment, because I thought, oh my gosh, the problem is her friends and family don't really understand what she's doing. They don't need her services. They don't know anyone who needs her services. They don't know anyone who hires speakers. They didn't build a pipeline for her at all. And they were probably some of the hardest reviews to get, because it's from people who love you, but don't really understand what you're doing and don't really understand why reviews are important. She really did not have the right people writing reviews for her. In that case, it was about her not necessarily doing a launch to do reviews, but her putting together the kind of invite list she should have gone through initially. And maybe it wasn't as extensive. She didn't need 200 people. Maybe she needed about 75 to 100 people that were more in line with her prospects and her referral partners, the people who would either directly benefit from her work or could get her in front of or connected to the kind of people who would benefit from her work. And then it was about reaching out and having a way of dialoguing with those people about her book. And it may not be a public event. It might be more of a private plan, a private marketing strategy, but more strategic than what she had been doing before, which was she published it, she got the 30 plus reviews, and she thought she was done. For someone else who feels like they didn't really have any kind of, nothing happened, it was just kind of quiet, this quiet release, then maybe the answer is you do want to create some buzz. You want to do something more public, in which case you would essentially be following the steps of the launch, getting a big launch team, engaging them. And then whether you collect the reviews in advance or not is kind of up to you. There's definitely some pros and cons. All the pros still exist. The cons are it's a little confusing if the review box is sitting right there. Why do I have to give it to you first? But left to people's own devices, I think you're not going to get as many reviews on Amazon if you don't offer the step of collecting reviews in advance, because that's where you are offering the prompts. You could try it and see how well it goes. Be like, here are the prompts, here's the box to drop your review on Amazon. But essentially, you would do that and maybe follow with some sort of big media or promotions or maybe an event, because you're trying to really wake up and engage your larger network and create some visibility around the fact that you have this book, because people really aren't talking about it. It could range from kind of quiet and behind the scenes, more kind of one-to-one sales efforts and sales conversations, or kind of a bigger push. And the why should also be attached to, is there something you're leading people to? Is there a workshop, or you want more speaking? You want to also boost your reviews? Like, make sure there are some clear outcomes for this relaunch so that you can measure at the end whether those efforts were met with success or not. And it's not just that you're doing buzz for buzz's sake. I mean, I'm sure this is part of what you would talk to your own clients about. We don't just create buzz. There's a purpose to it. So making sure that if the first time we didn't have all the lines figured out between the book and the business, this time we have those more solidly figured out.
Well, this is a perfect segue for you to share how our listeners can find out more about your brilliance and your services. How can they do that, Robbie?
Well, you can go to booklaunchbrainstorm.com. This landing page has information about the ways I support authors. I have both a DIY program with email support. That also is included in my one-on-one coaching. I also design and MC virtual book launch parties designed to help the author be seen as the expert and talk about what comes next. It's the end of that pipeline. And I have an implementation package. If you're doing the one-on-one coaching with me, you can also hire me and a VA to manage all the behind the scenes of all those emails like Lois did. And the same page, booklaunchbrainstorm.com, you'll learn about BizBook PubHub and about how to get my book and all the bonus content for my book. I put all the information on one page for you. Would love to hear from folks and see how I can support them.
You make it so easy. Thank you. And as you know, we always have our guests leave our listeners with a golden nugget. What's yours?
Well, I think it's taking a moment, like you said, what do you want this book to do for you? And making sure that you feel solid about that answer. And if it's a book that already exists, it's not too late. You didn't miss the boat. It's about making sure that you have a clear line between, I'm really excited, I love reading this book, how do I find the author, and what do I do with them next? Having that mapped out and getting the support you need so that readers become leads and clients, so that you are actually having the kind of impact you want to be having in the world. I know that we are often compelled to write books, but we want people to read them because they're not going to be very useful if they're not read. We want to make sure we are getting in front of the right audiences, and building the launch team is a big piece of how I think that gets done.
Yeah. And it's the first step in the book marketing process. So I love that. So thank you. Really appreciate you sharing your wisdom. You're so knowledgeable. And listeners, I know you're going to have to listen to this episode once again, if not twice or even 3 times, because Robbie shared such incredible information that if you just took one thing that he said and implemented it, I'm sure, dynamite. Thank you again. And by the way, listeners, if your book isn't selling the way you wanted or expected to, let's you and I jump on a quick call together to brainstorm ways to ramp up those sales, because you've invested a whole lot of time, money, and energy, and it's time you got the return you were hoping for. So go to bookmarketingbrainstorm.com to to schedule your free call. And in the meantime, I hope this powerful interview sparks some ideas you can use to sell more books. Until next week, here's wishing you much book and author marketing success.